As we all know that under APC government, the North is expressing a high level of hunger in the North. They are expressing high level of insecurity. They are expressing high level of out-of-school children under Tinubu government. And Obi have come out to slam Tinubu. He said that Northern Nigeria's food crisis is the result of your irresponsible governance. P2B knocks Tinubu over incompetent leadership. And he also said P2B warns over worsening hunger crisis in the Northern Nigeria. We cannot hide the fact that the North are suffering. We cannot hide the fact that the North are the ones suffering more in this APC government, because the level of insecurity happening in the North is alarming. Where farmers are no longer allowed to go to their farmland. If you go there, you will either be killed or they will rape your wife. This is what is happening in the North, and it has been happening over and over under APC government. What are the leaders doing? What is the government doing over the level of insecurity and worsening hunger in the North? Here says that more than 17 million people in Northern Nigeria are facing severe hunger as violence and aid cuts worsen the region's food crisis. The World Food Program says insecurity has forced families from their homes, kept farmers from their fields, and made it harder to deliver aid. Borno State is among the worst hit, with more than 3 million people facing acute food insecurity. The World Food Program says it needs $89 million to keep food and nutrition support going. But our government could spend billions of naira to buy aircraft. Our government could spend money to do things, but this is where the money is needed. People are going hungry in the North because of the level of insecurity. The high level of insecurity in the North is alarming, that farmers can no longer go to farmland to farm. Then, how do you expect them to get food? How do you expect them to pay school fees? Because right now, children in the North don't go to school anymore. There are more dropouts in the North than any other region in Nigeria. And here say that why his government negotiates with terrorists and fails to prosecute them. Tinubu warns media against becoming megaphones for insurgents. Tinubu came out and said that the social media or media should not be megaphone for insecurity. That means they should stop pushing what is happening in Nigeria when it comes to insecurity. They want to hide it under the carpet. And here says that Gumi warned Sondiboho against arresting bandits. According to him, nobody has the right to arrest and intimidate the bandits in Nigeria. Nobody has the right to arrest and intimidate the bandits in Nigeria. That means bandits are given freedom to do what they want to do in Nigeria and go scot-free. Nobody has the right to arrest them. This is what Sheikh Gumi is saying. Nobody has the right. Then ask yourself, why have our government failed to arrest these bandits? And even if they do, they will still pardon them and they will negotiate with them and they will even give them money. Jesus Christ, this is happening in Nigeria under APC government. Meanwhile, guys, let me let you guys watch how Rufai analyze this issue, and then let me get your views in the comment section. And please don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys in my next video.
17 million people across 9 conflict-hit states in northern Nigeria are facing severe hunger, warning that violence and funding cuts were driving food insecurity to its worst level in nearly a decade. The World Food Program, in a statement, said the latest food security analysis showed the number of people facing crisis, emergency, or catastrophic hunger had risen by almost 2 million from previous projections. The statement issued by the WFP Regional Director for West and Central Africa, Kinde Samba, noted that violence was spreading across a wider area and forcing people from their farmland. WFP, however, said it needs $89 million over the next 6 months to maintain food, nutrition, and logistics support across northern Nigeria. Good morning. Thank God it's Friday. And we start, of course, the morning show today with a review of the news headlines for this morning. And let me start with the last story that we just gave, and that is around what is a warring level. Warring. And I recall that at some points the president had declared a state of emergency on food security, and now we can see this being confirmed that we have a crisis or potential crisis on our hand. If you're saying that at least, that is, the number could be more. 17 million people are at risk of acute hunger, then there is a problem in the land. what has been identified as some of the obvious things that we have touched on? And it's almost a cycle. If you look at the issue of persistent insecurity, beyond the safety of lives and property, what we had said is the ripple effect and the long-term effect of banditry, terrorism, kidnapping. The fact that some people cannot go to their farms, especially even those who have led their lives, and able to feed their family members through subsistence farming. And that is why there's been a consistent call, a continued call to the federal government to address these challenges. Displacement, the IDPs, economic hardship, the cost of living crisis in terms of prices of food and food inflation being high, climate-related shocks. We're just talking about this a few days back, and we've been touching on this based on the levels of flood that some coastal states in Nigeria have experienced, and how that would actually affect harvest time with regards to some of these crops being washed away by flood waters. And these are the concerns. We do not need that to exacerbate the already existing problems caused by insecurity. And so you can understand the numbers. And I think what will even make it further worse is that they're saying that global funding has reduced. And so what would have been humanitarian interventions from other parts of the world is not, they don't have the capacity for that. And so we need to begin to think critically as a nation, because we keep talking about this revenue crunch and what faces us as a nation with regards to people being hungry or facing extreme hunger, and what can we do? The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, what are the plans? We've often talked about the conditional cash transfers, looked at food, looked at support for smallholder farmers, looked at different initiatives. To what extent have they helped when we talk about food security? We've talked about certain, concessions for farmers around tariff and duty on certain food produce, taking off tax from certain food produce just to make it more available. We've looked at perhaps even opening the borders to ensure that we're able to meet the food shortfall. But the big critical conversation would be, how much money does the Nigerian government have to invest in this area? We've often said that the reason why we must look at the softer side of terrorism in the north is, and when I say softer side, the non-kinetic, address of terrorism, by providing infrastructure, ensuring that we're able to reduce or alleviate poverty in these areas, is that if we don't deal with the problem, it would act as an incentive to these people to go into a life of criminality. And if the government fails them, we've seen in certain areas in the country, especially in the north, where the community members are beholden to terrorists because they almost feel bandits, because they feel like they've provided better security for them in that area. So you can entice the community by ensuring that they are able to provide food for them from the proceeds that they make from a life of criminality, through ransom and the likes. If you continue to do that, you whittle down the power of legitimate government. And so that is why it is a matter of urgency, and I hope that there will be a response from the Nigerian government to this particular news and information, the statistics released by the World Food Programme. Very critical. We cannot talk about politicking ahead of 2027 and the likes if we don't address this particular matter. And the rains will continue to fall, so we need to look at that. Add to that what has been warned as what could perhaps be a health crisis if it's not properly managed, typhoid, cholera, malaria, some of the illnesses and diseases that have been said might rear their heads based on this level of flooding. Now, since we're talking about security, let me also touch on the U.S. withdrawing its troops. My big question this morning, yes, they've talked about the successes they've been able to make. They're saying that even though they are withdrawing boots on grounds, there will still be collaboration, especially in terms of intelligence gathering. But my big question this morning would be, what next? What happens next for the Nigerian side of things? The advantage of this collaboration with the United States, of course, would be shared knowledge, training for our troops, lessons learned, improved operations of the Nigerian military. But then what happens? This is not the end on our part, the end of terrorism or the end of the war against terrorism. We must double down. We've talked about provision of equipment, the welfare of our troops. We've looked at intelligence gathering. We've looked at protecting lives of those who have the courage to actually provide information to the security troops. So yes, yes, the US has done its part with regards to boots on ground, but now for Nigeria, the question will then be what next, and how do we consolidate on the wins, the gains that have already been achieved by this collaboration? That is my big question this morning. Rufa, your take on these stories.
Okay, when it comes to farming, the most important problem with the Nigerian farming ecosystem is not that we don't produce, it's post-harvest losses. So if you produce about 100%, post-harvest losses takes over 40-50%. Before you even take from farm to table, you've lost half of it. You think Nigeria does not produce enough strawberry. Why is strawberry being imported? Because you can't move strawberry from Jos to Lagos. You don't have the logistics. Roads are bad. Are you going to air freight them? The logistics is problematic. So most of them rot out in Jos. Have you ever wondered why food is cheaper in some parts of the country than some parts? Post-harvest losses. Second problem, logistics. What are the practical solutions? Government must provide storage facilities. I think we're talking about the other day when government hived off most of its storage facilities. So when government was even saying, okay, we'll release grains from National Grain Reserve, people were asking, where's the grain? Where's the National Reserve? How are we storing this food? And you know what happens then? If the middlemen now buy this food, they hold the food, then they hike up the price. Some people have done local initiatives, things like, I think it's Affect or Affegs, where they have like a place to store, sort of like an exchange, and they can also help with the pricing when things get a lot better or when things get worse, you can release it out there. Apart from that, also, investing in agriculture, yes, insecurity is a big problem. How do you farm effectively when there's insecurity? But also, modern technology and agriculture. Another problem is yield. The yield per hectare is very low. Local varieties. You also need to be able to, I don't want to use the word engineer because a lot of people would think about genetically modified, but no. It doesn't mean that kind of engineering, but there are some activities you will do. Maybe it's the kind of fertilizer you put on the land and how you even take care of your land in the first place. Another new engineering methods of agriculture, for your greenhouse, farming vegetable and things like that. So there are a lot of things across the agricultural value chain. Most of what we're talking about mostly is the crop value chain. Then you now have the livestock value chain, which we're not doing very well with this nomadic farming, and that's not the way to do a livestock value chain. It has to be very intensive, it has to be holistic to be able to mitigate. Then you get more yield for your meat, then you get better yield quality, not the kind of meat quality we have here, and also you are able to appropriate and export. So that's another value chain. Then there's a technological value chain to agriculture that talks about, the technology. How can you use new technology, artificial insemination, things like that? How can you store a semen for a very good breed to be able to fertilize another breed to make a lot of production value chain? Then you have another value chain which has to do with the agri-economics and agri-extension. What's the loan threshold from the bank? What's the market ecosystem? Who are those going to talk to people on ground as regards better agricultural practices? So there's a value chain. So when you put all of this together, that's what makes up the food production value chain. But once you start to lack in logistical value chain, agricultural value chain, agri-economics value chain, agri-extension value chain, research and development value chain, and all of that, then you lose it all. You lose it all. So there needs to be an understanding. And it's not just by buying tractors from Belarus. No, that's not it. That's just one part of the value chain. There's a lot more that needs to be done. Do you know that AI also works with agriculture? Because you can use AI to season patterns of how you're going to plant. The second point I'm going to make, yes, the Americans have left. They are going to leave at some point. I mean, they're not going to be here forever. Where are we also now going to develop our security architecture value chain? All the data that the Americans have taken away from you, they're saying they're going to do their research. When our own university is going to do the value chain? I thought to a large extent, if we've been giving over $1 billion for the last 20 years for security budget, at least a portion of that money should go to our Nigerian universities to be able to develop architecture to improve the security. Schools like University of Lagos, all the big universities and all of that should be getting some part of the security budget as endowment, working with the military to develop our own indigenous technology so that you have a crisis becoming a panacea to develop the education system. Because most of this data you see America churn out and things like that, they also work in tandem with the university architecture. And it's that part that is going to bolster the intelligence architecture of our ecosystem. But are we doing that currently? No. We think the fight is just, boots on the ground. Yes, we have some drones here and there. We buy fighter jets and everything. It is deeper than that. There's a security architecture, technology angle to it, and intelligence that can be deployed from the university ecosystem. I think we should think about this. Thirdly, Dangote gave a very, very good, robust response. So apparently what he's saying is that even if Brent is $71 per barrel, the premium on top of the grades he buy makes the price go up to $95 per barrel. So his landing costs about $95 per barrel. And he broke it down very transparently. This year alone, this month alone, I know that Dangote has spent over $1 billion in bringing crude into the country. That's minus his cost to be able to crack and refine the crude and now sell it to people. Normally, before, Bonny Light, you had like plus $5 per barrel on the premium. But the premium has gone up to over $20 per barrel now because there are still international concerns about the war. So obviously his argument is that the price cannot go down to the $71 per barrel if you want to calculate based on pricing system, because you still have a higher premium being paid on it. In fact, in the month of May, some went up to over $100 per barrel because the premium was still going up to about $30 per barrel on top of the $70 per barrel that is the benchmark for Brent. Good instance, and I think he broke it down, and it was very transparent. So if he gives a good argument, I don't fight with logic.
Now, the Dangote refinery, petroleum and petrochemicals refinery, released a statement. What is the main point in that statement? The main point in that statement, and this is against the background of the FCCPC in Nigeria, and also the federal government generally, saying that the pump price of fuel should come down in the light of the fact that the spot price of fuel with the detente that we have between the warring factions in the Middle East war has translated into reduction in the pump price, in the price of crude oil per barrel, down from the highs to about 73, and then down to 72, then to about 70, with the WTI at 67.65. And the argument is that if that is what is happening as a result of the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, then that should translate to an advantage for Nigerians at the filling stations. It wasn't only the Nigerian government making that argument, it was also the American government, through David Trump, who was in fact threatening that taxation for the retailers will be higher if he doesn't see a reflection of reduction in the spot price at the gas stations, as they call it out there. Now, what Dangote Refinery said principally in that statement is that Dangote Refinery is, number one, interested in the stability of prices. However, that it is a misconception to think that, okay, it is the daily price of crude oil in the international market that will dictate the price immediately in the market. That what the refineries use is what they had bought previously. So if they bought the last stock at $72 per barrel, then of course it will take time before that goes into production, and then the pricing mechanism will change. However, this is to be taken along with an essay by Mr. Dankunle, who is an energy expert, who wrote a piece titled Understanding Pricing Mechanism in a Deregulated Economy. And Mr. Dankunle's principal argument is simply that in a deregulated economy, government cannot decree fuel prices because it follows the logic of demand and supply. So you cannot determine prices by decree. He said, however, that for Nigeria to achieve its objective of making life easier for the average Nigerian in terms of how much they buy fuel, you will have to look at domestic production. You cannot rely solely on importation. And that also you have to look at ramping up crude oil production, which are major areas that we have been concerned about in this country. If the refineries are working, if you are increasing crude oil production, then of course maybe you have a situation whereby with reduction in importation, you will have a better pricing regime. And these are arguments, that we have pushed also on this table. So it's a very complex. The pricing mechanism is very complex. It's just not enough to say, the spot price of crude is $72 for Brent crude today, and then on the basis of that, you just jump to the conclusion that prices of fuel must come down. So I'm just quoting Mr. Kunle, who is an energy expert, in terms of how people should understand, the mechanics involved. So, but the residual point is that, Dangote refinery has now reduced gantry price. Now, Nigerians, if they see that at the filling stations, they will see it as some kind of respite. But it is not because the Nigerian government decreed that, petrol retailers and refineries should bring down the price. It's demand and supply equation. Now, the World Food Program saying that hunger has hit worst levels in northern Nigeria. I think in the report of the National Bureau of Statistics, this point had also been previously made, that there is hunger. Apart from the National Bureau of Statistics, I've quoted ad nauseam here what the World Meteorological Organization has been saying with regard to climate change and also crisis of urban planning and what has resulted in the El Nino phenomenon, which is going to affect communities, countries, whether it is in India or it's in Cote d'Ivoire or it's in Nigeria or it's in Ghana or Togo, till December, because sea levels have changed. There is a problem with the environment and with global warming. But in Nigeria, the problem is further worsened by the insecurity in the northern parts of the country. So this year, in terms of harvest, we're going to face a very serious problem. In fact, the World Food Program is even predicting droughts in some parts of Africa. So this is the reality as a result of insecurity and also as a result of global environmental situation. The only line to add is that I think that report by the World Food Program should be forwarded for specific purposes, for obvious reasons, to Mr. Bayo Ononuga, who has been saying that he has not seen hunger in parts of Nigeria. What he is not able to see, the World Food Program from a faraway distance says it is seeing it. But the wake-up call is that it's likely to get worse. So Nigeria needs to invest more in agriculture. The $1.2 billion, or is it 1.5, that we just got as a financing package from the World Bank. One of the items listed here is that agriculture will be addressed, water will be addressed, irrigation will be addressed. So, these are the challenges here. And the Nigerian government still has to address the challenge of insecurity. Now, as for the Americans who had withdrawn some of their troops, well, it's not all the troops. They're still present here. President Trump, speaking recently, had said the situation in Nigeria with regard to terrorism has been significantly weakened. Dr. Sullivan Gorka, who is of the National Security Council, Senior Director in charge of counterterrorism at the National Security Council of the United States, also said, well, they've been able to make a lot of progress in Nigeria. And that they got some electronic gadgets from the jihadists after eliminating about 199 of them. And they have not seen anything like that from any part of the world since 9/11. And what Dr. Gorka was saying simply is that the situation in Nigeria has become some kind of hub for all kinds of terrorists, whether from Syria, whether it is ISIS, or whether it's from Libya. And that in itself should be a source of concern. So the Americans may have withdrawn to go and analyze some of the communication gadgets that they have been able to seize, but that's also a reminder that the Nigerian government should commit to doing a lot more in terms of securing this environment. The purpose of government being to secure our people.
That North is expressing high level of hunger. That's just the gospel truth, because they don't even know where their next meal is coming from. The level of hunger in the North is alarming. And if something is not being done right now, it might get worse as the day goes by. Because every day we keep on hearing that they are imposing levy on people in the community, that before you access a farmland, you pay a certain amount of money. This is happening under APC government, and this is why it's getting worse day by day. They are imposing levy on farmers that before you can access the farmland, you must pay so amount of money in their own community. Outsider came out and they are taking over Nigeria, and our government are not doing anything. Even Gumi have come out to say that nobody even have the right to even arrest and intimidate bandits. But bandits have the right to go ahead and be killing people and be collecting their farmlands. But nobody have the right to arrest and intimidate bandits. This happens under APC government. Under APC government, we have lost over 16 top generals in the hands of terrorists. And even though they were arrested, they were pardoned. Our government are only negotiating with terrorists. Tinubu came out and said that the media should stop being megaphone of insurgents. The media should stop publishing what is happening in Nigeria. They want to sweep this insecurity under the carpet. Because that is the only reason why you should tell media that they should not be megaphone of what's happening in Nigeria. Nigeria is the big crisis, and if nothing is done, it might get worse day by day. And you can see that every day you'll be hearing that these people attack these people. Bandits are ravaging Nigeria on a daily basis, and our government are not doing anything. My dear guys, let me get your views, and I'll see you guys in my next video.